I believe in IBM Watson for one reason. IBM believes its own message. I know this because IBM is putting money, $1 billion over the next 5 years, into the success of cognitive computing, and the IBM CEO is betting her job on it. If successful, the biggest news is that IBM is plowing this field by itself, so as a minimum it will have a 10-year leap over the competition. At the start of 2014, IBM Watson is 2 years into a 20-year program of commercializing cognitive computing, the third era of computing, and the next big thing are underway. Let's explore IBM Watson by asking the following questions. Why is IBM Watson so special? How does IBM Watson work? How does IBM Watson work with users? How does IBM Watson help its users deliver value? Where does IBM Watson stand at the start of 2014? Is IBM Watson easy to work with? IBM Watson is an n-dimensional ecosystem, not a 2 or 3-dimensional landscape. IBM Watson involves everything without limit. In a most notable breakthrough, people do not program IBM Watson. Instead, people work with IBM Watson. IBM Watson involves everyone, without exception. IBM Watson delivers a head start in cognitive computing to its using industry sectors. IBM Watson delivers a first-mover advantage to using customers without fail. IBM Watson navigates natural language, currently English. IBM Watson handles a vast amount of disparate data, both structured and unstructured. IBM Watson learns and gets smarter with each question asked and answered. IBM Watson learns what users know through the corpus of information users provide as a repository. IBM Watson teaches users what users need to know, even offering hypotheses. IBM Watson answers questions with an understanding of context, along with levels of confidence. IBM Watson learns from the domain information supplied, user questions, its own answers given, and user response to answers given. IBM Watson has tools including Watson Developer Cloud, Watson Content Store, and Watson Talent Hub. IBM Watson features a Watson Engagement Advisor. IBM Watson features a Watson Discovery Advisor. IBM Watson features a Watson Analytics. IBM Watson features a Watson Explorer. IBM is committed to spend $1 billion over 5 years, assign 2,000 professionals, and provide a $100 million equity fund to spur innovation and creativity among entrepreneurs. IBM Watson is already at work in the medical, retail, and transportation industry sectors. IBM Watson is awaiting a select number of customers who will follow a defined path of successful IBM Watson use in working with IBM Watson. Select customers are those that have framed terms of reference for a use case, including questions for Watson, and where development content for unique apps will emerge through the use of the Watson Development Cloud. How ready is the Government Acquisition Supply Chain Risk Management Assurance Framework for IBM Watson? How ready is IBM Watson for the Government Acquisition Supply Chain Risk Management Assurance Framework? To what extent does IBM Watson take on the intellectual persona of those it works with? To what extent does a user take on the intellectual persona of IBM Watson? If persona transfer occurs, to what extent is this persona fingerprint a privacy or security concern. The question here is whether IBM Watson could be a game-changing advancement in program acquisition. For so long an area of unmet need and supply chain risk management assurance, now the center of risk and uncertainty in national security and global competitiveness in a shrinking, globalized world. You don't program IBM Watson, you work with it. But is IBM Watson easy to work with? To what extent does IBM Watson take on the intellectual persona of those it works with? Game-changing innovation is needed. Is IBM Watson Cloud ready to address the need? If so, how? IBM has announced what promises to be the game-changing integrating element in its cloud computing offering based on IBM Watson's cognitive computing technology, with promising application to global supply chain challenges. Some of these challenges are highlighted in the Supply Chain Risk Management Assurance Framework that focuses squarely on engineered flow control and process risk calculation. IBM Watson Cloud Computing, applied with the Supply Chain Risk Management Assurance Framework, promises consequential outcomes that address some of the next steps called for in the National Strategy for Global Supply Chain Security, specifically advancing technology, building resilient infrastructure, priority standards, improving commercial, and engaging industry partners. IBM Watson learns by understanding natural language through broadside and ingestion of information, generating and evaluating hypotheses with confidence levels, adapting and learning by ingesting information and answering questions. These are just some of the elements involved in applying IBM Watson as a cognitive system. Is it time to conduct an IBM Watson experimental prototype on supply chain risk management assurance? IBM Watson experimental prototype involves an assertion and questions to be probed. The assertion: IBM Watson would be a game-changing advancement in program acquisition and supply chain risk management assurance. The probing questions span technology maturity, domain readiness, and implementation ease. Is IBM Watson as a cognitive system at the inflection point of useful application in program acquisition and supply chain risk management assurance? Is IBM Watson a game-changing advancement in program acquisition and supply chain risk management assurance? Can IBM Watson be taught the deep semantics of program acquisition and supply chain risk management assurance? Teaching IBM Watson supply chain risk management assurance involves two parts. Part A, preparation, involves assembling a supply chain domain database along with the factors and sources of risk that may become problems in preparation for a preliminary question-answer dialogue with IBM Watson, intended to teach IBM Watson. Part B, application, involves instantiating the database with an actual supply chain of interest, including all nodes, in preparation for a realistic question-answer dialogue with IBM Watson, intended to actually inform supply chain users. Teaching IBM Watson. Plan A, preparation. Load all industry, government, and academic documents and standards on supply chain, acquisition, risk management, and assurance. Identify software and supply chain risk management assurance factors, such as the 28 factors in the Essentials of Software and Supply Chain Risk Management Assurance Framework. Load all industry, government, and academic documents and standards on the software and supply chain risk management assurance factors identified. For each factor, enter into a question-answer dialogue with IBM Watson using the evidence-based assurance assertion argument assessment questions in the Essentials of Software and Supply Chain Risk Management Assurance Framework. Teaching IBM Watson, Part B, Application. Select an actual supply chain of real interest, such as a weapon system in progress, an acquisition in preparation, or the Affordable Care Act website. Load all acquisition and program documents, reports, and data for each node in the supply chain, including Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. For each factor, enter into a question-answer dialogue with IBM Watson using the evidence-based assurance assertion argument assessment questions in the Essentials of Software and Supply Chain Risk Management Assurance Framework. Examples of evidence-based assurance assertion argument assessment questions for selected factors for use in the IBM Watson dialogue are shown here. Supply chain risk management. Is the organization committed to supply chain risk management? Is the organization explicitly committed to smart and trusted supply chain risk management tactics? Risk management. Does the organization calculate supply chain risk management risk based on assessing sources of risk and problems? Does the organization explicitly mitigate, transfer, or accept each risk encountered? Resiliency in depth. Is there a demonstrated commitment to supply chain resiliency in depth? Capability maturity model integration. Has the organization complied with CMMI Level 2, focusing on software project management practices? Has the organization complied with CMMI Level 3, focusing on software product engineering processes? Cybersecurity. Is security access to supply chain controlled by three-factor authentication? That is, what you have, what you are, and what you know. Is proprietary data and information subject to encryption protection? Cloud computing. Does the cloud vendor accept a service level agreement to protect and safeguard proprietary data and information? Have the possibility and security risks of multi-tenancy been assessed and found to be acceptable? Software assurance. Are build security in practices followed? Are known security vulnerabilities understood and monitored and avoided? Are known security weaknesses understood, monitored, and avoided? Trusted chain of custody. Is the chain of custody identified? Is the chain of custody unbroken? Counterfeit and tainted component detection. Does the organization have the capability to apply static analysis of source code? Does the organization have the capability to apply function extraction of object code? Does the organization have the capability to apply rigorous software inspections process of source code? Additional YouTube resources for supply chain risk management assurance are listed here. Here is my contact information. I would be happy to receive questions and have discussions with people on this important subject.